It's come to this, the end of Pebble. My favorite smartwatch has shuffled off its mortal coil. So where do we go from here? Also, is Apple too reliant on iOS for its profits? Yes, they are. So what might the solution be for generating shareholder value in an era of smartphone saturation? We don't rightfully know, but we're going to try and talk about it. Those stories, plus we're going to answer your viewer questions. So make sure you're charged and ready for episode 230 of the Pocketnow Weekly Podcast. This weekly podcast is where we dissect and discuss those gadgets that make our lives mobile, smartphones, tablets, and wearables. It's all the stuff you wished existed when you were a kid, and chucking pebbles around was a lot more fun when you were skipping stones at a pond. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, senior editor at Pocketnow.com, blasting this signal in a Pocketnow After Dark edition of the podcast. It's nice and dark and cozy outside. We're starting to get some actual weather. It might dip down into the high 50s today. That's why I'm wearing my hoodie. So it's cold here in Southern California. Joined as always by plucky podcast producer Mr. Jules Wong, who's not on the East Coast this week. He's a daring traveling adventurer around the globe, yet the magic of Hangouts are still bringing us together.
Yeah, I'm in Hong Kong for the next 3 months, so technically this is an afternoon podcast for me. It's still the same old. And hey, all I can say is that for the next 3 months, it's going to be about 60 to 70 degrees every morning, noon, and night. So
that's exciting, though. I mean, it was one of those things we were really trying to have those conversations about what our strategies for this were going to be. And
the weather. The weather is the main conversation topic. This is not the podcast. This is not. No,
I was going to say the strategy on getting the podcast recorded and with us being on opposite ends of the globe and actually this first startup. I mean, we're having the normal Hangouts shenanigans. Hangouts is still melting down on us every chance it gets to try and screw us over. But this is encouraging. Like, our start here isn't drastically different from what we normally encounter when we're both stateside.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is business as usual Hangouts. Thank you for that.
Well, not too much of a thank you for that, but thanks, Hangouts.
It's a sarcastic thank you for that.
Well, before we jump into the show proper, we do need to talk about a sponsor. Back this week, we're really excited to have them on the show. VideoBlocks. VideoBlocks is returning to support the weekly podcast, and this is a subscription-based stock media company that gives you unlimited access to premium footage that everyone can afford. It's the same great content you'll find on other services at a cheaper price. VideoBlocks has a library of over 115,000 HD video clips, After Effects templates, motion backgrounds, and cinemagraphs. AudioBlocks has a library of over 130,000 music tracks, sound effects, and loops. And all of this is fantastic content to help improve your videos and podcasts. And the VideoBlocks team is constantly adding new stuff to keep their library fresh. Everything is 100% royalty free. That is huge. And that's for both personal and professional use. So even if you have to end your subscription at some point, it will not affect the copyright status of your projects. Once you buy it, it's yours to keep. Now, VideoBlocks is offering our listeners a great promotional deal. If you subscribe now to Video and Audio Blocks, using our promo link, you'll get a 1-year subscription for $149. That's $100 off for our listeners. Check out what VideoBlocks has to offer and take your content creation up a notch. Go to videoblocks.com/pocket2016. That's videoblocks.com/pocket2016 to score this deal. And we thank them for supporting the PN Weekly Podcast.
Woohoo!
I've been trolling Audio Block something fierce. Like after they sponsored us that first go around for those first 2 weeks, we did land. We have a VideoBlocks account and we added an AudioBlocks account. And so for all of my recent videos, all of the music tracks that we've been producing, I pulled that audio from AudioBlocks, and it's felt really great just being able to shake up some of those tunes. I think that's the biggest worry that a lot of YouTube producers don't fully understand. Is where you can source audio that's not going to get you a copyright strike on YouTube. I know in previous projects that I've worked on, that's been a major concern, and AudioBlocks takes that stigma completely away with their audio library. I've been loving it.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, all you need to do is go to SoundCloud and see what you control over there too. It's like all the content creators are just
Well,
clamoring over
but
each
it's
other.
gnarly stuff too. I mean, like, I don't really understand how some channels get away with it, except for maybe them having some kind of sweetheart deal with Google when they're putting up movie clips that have nothing to do with their discussion, or they're playing music tracks, and you're like, this channel still has to exist by ad revenue. But if I were to do that as a solo producer, like on my old personal YouTube channel, like I'd have been getting copyright strikes out the wazoo, and they would have shut my channel down. So something like a really good stock footage company, video blogs, audio blogs, totally takes the edge off. It's a lot easier. There's a lot more trust that I'm going to land this audio file. It's been sold to them for a reason, and I don't have to worry about shenanigans in the future shutting my stuff down.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty useful to.
I was going to say the perfect case in point. I don't know. Did you catch this, Jules? I don't know how if you're into like video gaming stuff. I don't know if you're one of those kids who likes to play the video games. But the Video Game Awards, when they went live on YouTube, the actual broadcast of the Video Game Awards got shut. The audio was completely removed because one of the clips had a music track on the back of one of the video games that they were demoing, and YouTube's response was an automatic audio pull. So you would go and you'd see this like 2-hour broadcast, and it was completely muted, and all probably because of about 10 seconds of audio on one of those video game samples. And that's how gnarly this stuff can get.
I mean, it's basically nothing separates between us and the big guys sometimes when 1 second of audio triggers audio removal.
Yeah, it did happen to us one time, didn't we? Like we had like
yeah,
what was it? It was some K-pop music video that we used to close out one of our shows, and it wasn't even like we were using it as the main audio bed, but enough of it played that it pulled the audio from our podcast. And you're like, that's ridiculous.
I remember that one. Oh man,
that was so ugly. Good times. Well, Mr. Juan, if you would be so kind, because I know we've got people in the live chat. They're already making a lot of noise, and then we've got some people that are trying to comment in through various other means. Would you properly explain how people can get in contact with us for the show?
So if you want to get in touch and make your way over to Twitter, well, you can add on anything to your comments, but mainly the hashtag PN Weekly, hashtag PN Weekly, and we'll see your comments throughout the show. We'll respond to them as best we can. If we can't get to them, and if you have something a little bit more deeper in terms of a dive, email us at podcast@pocketnow.com, and we'll be able to help you out in that fashion. So hashtag PN Weekly on Twitter, and also Pocketnow, podcast@pocketnow.com is where you should go. I have all the windows shut, so I think I need to open them up because I'm really feeling the lack of oxygen in here.
Are you going to pass out on me there, bud?
But the thing is that there's way too much noise outside. There's construction, there's swimming pool downstairs. It's just crazy. So I had to weigh whether or not, okay, am I going to get retarded in here, as the Black Eyed Peas originally once said? Or
the Black Eyed Peas were wont to say, I would prefer you be able to breathe, and I'm sure we can all deal with a little extra ambiance from the surrounding locale.
All right. Well, I just opened the windows, so get ready for some amazing ship horns.
Well, and to Jules's most recent point there, the PN Weekly hashtag, we're already getting some great questions that we're going to be addressing throughout the course of the show. And we've got 3 killer emails from the podcast@Pocketnow email. We definitely thank everyone who's participating in the conversation. And for those of you in the live chat, we love trolling through that conversation, but it's way too fast for us to keep up with sometimes. So we definitely appreciate the chatter there. Let's jump straight into our first story. This one's hitting me super close to home. And I actually did produce a video on this afternoon. And that is the proper death. From last week when we were talking about Fitbit acquiring Pebble, we now have official word from the company, not just a cynical little tweet as to what was going on. But it does look like all of our worst fears are coming true. As Pebble fans, I should say, Fitbit is acquiring Pebble, gutting the company, and they're pretty much officially dead. Proper dead for any type of official warranty support, for any type of refunds. If you haven't already gotten a refund for a product, then it looks like that part of the company is also officially defunct. And there's still a few more questions as to what functionality might remain. But yeah, this is a sad, sad day for smartwatch fans who were on that original Pebble train.
Yeah, I was never really into Pebble because I thought that the rest of the smartwatch ecosystem would have, fleshed out over the next 18 or so months, and that I would have better options in general. And well, I guess I never was really in the position to get a smartwatch. I always did admire Pebble's, just upstart bringing it on and making sure that we knew it was first and that we knew where it was coming from and who was supporting it. So it was always a thing for me to just watch and see how so we have a lesser kind of, OS going on here, and then timeline started coming in, and then Pebble Time started coming in as well with a little bit of color, and then it seemed to culminate in this whole Pebble 2, Time 2, and then the rest of it in this latest round. And it just, I don't know. I feel like it was about. I was so close to pulling the trigger on Time 2, but
that has actually been a really common sentiment. What's so frustrating about this type of when we're talking about a smaller tech company, this feels a lot like. Well, but this feels a lot like the dying days of Palm. When HP bought out Palm, and then you had all of those the touch what were the tablets that went on fire sale. And so I woke up super early on a Sunday morning to go stand outside a Best Buy to go pick up one of these tablets for like $100, and there was this huge long line of people. And people were pulling out Palm Pres, and people were pulling out like old tungstens, and it was this like this loving eulogy of Palm fans. No one was there to like try and score a cheap tablet. It was all of these people that were trying to get the last taste of this thing that they liked, this company that they liked. And so I put out the video talking about because the video that I put out wasn't even just about news. It was more a vlog. Like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I really don't. I'm really hoping that my Pebble Time lasts long enough for me to find a proper replacement. That's really what the tone of the video is about. And all of the comments, a huge majority of them, there's so many people. This was what was great. There were so many people who were offering suggestions, and it wasn't like, haha, your company's dead and you should have got a Samsung. It was more like, well, if you liked this feature about your watch, it's not going to be the same, but maybe you should check out a Frontier, or maybe you should check out a Skagen. And like, people really trying to look at what they were using, and they all seem to appreciate the reasons why I like my Pebble. And this was one of the, this was a great moment for me this afternoon, and just seeing what the Pocketnow audience could do. I'm genuinely asking. I'm genuinely putting it out there. I love smartwatches. I still have some Android Wear watches that I'm going to keep cycling through and putting in the rotation, but nothing really has stacked up to what I loved about my Pebble. And I was really sort of taken aback. I was really pleasantly surprised by the tone of a lot of the comments and the conversations that other people were getting into. Again, it became something of a eulogy of people who were fans of this brand, and not all of them were owners. A lot of them are just like, hey, I was like looking at what this company was doing, and I thought it was really interesting. I have an Apple Watch, but I wouldn't have my Apple Watch if it weren't for Pebble being in this space too.
And it was especially the case that, this wasn't even, a Palm. We're in the age of crowdfunding potato salad, for God's sake. So, it's just, it was a more of an interlocked circle in more ways than one. And, that's something to be appreciated, when everything seems to be falling apart. I'm not, Fitbit really wants to, see where it can, just extract everything it can, except for the hardware, except for I'm not even sure if they want the customer base is that because they
They obviously don't. I mean, if we are going to talk about a little bit of the news and stuff that we covered in that video, I think there were a lot of things that weren't surprising. This company is being dismantled instantly. So this Fitbit deal goes through, and Fitbit owns Pebble's IP, and Pebble in their blog post says, we're done. That's it. The company is over. They are immediately ceasing all production, all shipping, all sales. But the rude shock came from things like refunds. I feel if you went out and bought a Pebble 2, that part of what you bought was an expectation of the server side of the company maintaining that product for some period of time. I mean, you know, in smartphone land, we kind of think about support for around 2 years. Maybe smartwatch land, it's only going to be about a year. I don't know what to even say is reasonable. My first generation Pebble is still working great, you know. So I mean, what do we really want to put on that? But that moving forward, you can't get a refund. So if you feel like what you bought isn't complete anymore, if the refund wasn't processed before yesterday, then they don't really exist for you to refund a product, and that is unexcusable. And then officially, warranties are now defunct. So if you got it and you like it, if anything goes wrong with it, well, you're just SOL. And again, I feel like in merging these companies, it was Fitbit's responsibility to, if you're going to buy this company and you're going to gut their IP, it was Fitbit's responsibility to honor the warranty, the promises, the expectations that Pebble consumers had. And for them to make this kind of a move in gutting Pebble, I find to be completely intolerable. That is exactly the wrong way to do business with. And to your point, Jules, they obviously don't want Pebble's customer base if that's how they're going to handle what Pebble brought to the table, the customers that Pebble brought to the table.
Is it safe to assume that most of the stipulations that we saw placed in this whole deal were mostly on Fitbit's suggestion, just because Pebble was in, as they kept saying for months and months on end, in a dire financial situation, and that they needed saving no matter what?
Yeah, no, I believe that that's probably accurate. Again, we have no actual confirmation on that, and this is really just my feeling as a somewhat embittered Pebble fan. But no, it really does have that feel to it, doesn't it? That Pebble wasn't doing so hot. They had a relatively successful Kickstarter launch for this last generation of products, but that really wasn't going to save the company. And it's disappointing because we never got to see what something like the Pebble Core could have done. A little programmable puck of versatility and sensors and connectivity. So they had an offer come in. Fitbit is a huge name, a huge brand in this space, and it makes sense that if you're going to sell out to anyone, and you weren't going to, Google obviously wouldn't have wanted anything to do with Pebble. Apple obviously wouldn't have wanted anything to do with Pebble, and they probably couldn't have joined forces with another smaller player like a Garmin or I'm spacing on other, or like a Martian. You weren't gonna buoy the company by doing work with them. And yeah, you're right. Like Samsung is also too big a player with their own solutions for them to want to play with someone like Pebble. So Fitbit comes along. Fitbit says, hey, you know what? We'll give you cash. And for that cash, we're going to get all this stuff. But that's also one of the first steps in making me never want to do business with Fitbit. If Fitbit didn't provide for some solution in how customers can get refunds, if these products are no longer what was purchased, the expectation of what was purchased, and that these customers are now completely out for warranty and support. And the best they can point to are help forums. That's completely inexcusable. That is not how we should be doing business. And any of the Pebble fans here, when they start looking at that aspect of it, we're all hoping that these watches will survive for at least a while yet. But knowing that if anything goes up with my Pebble time, that it's just done. That to me is shocking. Is shocking that we're in that position now.
All right, so there's the coping process that's yet to come, or it's ongoing, I guess. And there's also the fact that there might be a hope that Fitbit has a somewhat substantial change in terms of what it does for a product, in terms of what it does for, something a charge HR, like that was the next big step for them in terms of evolving their form factor beyond
Right.
just step counter thing. Uh, do you think that all of these notifications, these apps get moved along, or are they going to die? And I guess we'll go from there, because there's this whole thing about whether or not Fitbit is dragging Pebble and its remnants along slow death.
Well, and I would have preferred a long slow death, because man, this is fast. And again, I keep using words like shocking, but that's what's so surprising about this. So the main hope is Fitbit has gutted Pebble's IP. If Fitbit were to take what we would have gotten with the Pebble Time 2 and put a Fitbit spin on it, that would be an interesting product. That would be one I would be curious to check out. The whole notion of a Pebble Time, which I absolutely adore my Pebble Time, but with a heart rate sensor, which is constantly tracking in the background, and that we can still talk about 4 to 6 day battery life, with a richer notification experience, better applet support, better watch face support, all of those things were really compelling ideas. And like the one thing that I really do wish that my Pebble Time had was some kind of heart rate or heart rate monitor. So Fitbit has sort of a gap in their lineup where they don't have anything that's really a good proper watch solution. They've got a lot of fitness trackers, and some of those fitness trackers are more robust, have nicer screens, but nothing that really approaches the functionality that we might see from a Gear, from an Apple Watch, from an Android Wear device. And the closest I think you could get in this space would be to option a company like Pebble. Now, in being interested in what Fitbit might have to offer, I'm instantly one step negative because of the way that Fitbit destroyed the customer relationship for Pebble products. So I'm absolutely curious, and I'm very hopeful to see Fitbit try to sort of utilize the Pebble DNA, but I'm not going to be rushing out to buy a first gen Fitbit smartwatch. I will play the wait and see game. And in the meantime, I'm hoping to grab something else. I've gotten some amazing suggestions. Like I said, the Pocketnow community has been overwhelmingly supportive in my hour of need. So I'm looking at a number of different I'll probably play with before I go to a Fitbit.
There aren't that many options right now, at least, because we have a lot of older options, or options from the more traditional luxury brands, and then of course, there are the smaller players, and then. But we aren't seeing the major OEM step up in terms of Android Wear, at the very least, until early next year with Wear 2.0. We have Samsung, which is delivered a very reliable, very strong, I would say, preliminarily speaking, without having touched the things. The Gear S3 was pretty good,
Right.
And the Apple Watch, it's kind of a iteration with GPS and whatnot. But hey, it captured its iPhone user base, and you might as well just bring along all these.
I gotta say,
it's sort of going on its own pace.
Well, and the second edition Apple Watch, I actually got to give Apple props. I like the improvements they've made to the second gen Apple Watch.
Water resistance was definitely
Huge.
a need to be.
Huge.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've got on my Pebble that I'm not going to have on my Huawei watch bugs the crap out of me. I'm sorry. Please continue, Jules.
I was wondering if Fitbit has, will actually gain anything from this, because we've seen it lead the market after market, market share report after report, and it's great, cash numbers, but overall health of the company going forward is kind of at a question, because they are just not getting the product engagement, the retained engagement that they need in order to support peripheral services. So where do you think Fitbit might be able to utilize its Pebble property, or does it even succeed?
Well, and that's a great question that I wish any type of insight that we can provide will probably be rendered moot over the next couple of months once we see what Fitbit's strategy actually is. I think there's a huge opportunity for Fitbit to try.
I mean, this is a show where we just speculate and just go off the rails.
This is all wild speculation. This is and I apologize right now. I'm drinking some delicious kombucha, but I'm trying not to let this burp come up right in front of this microphone. No, so Fitbit actually has a huge opportunity here, because I think a lot of companies are struggling with the idea of how to diversify their lineup and break into new markets. And for as much as we've seen larger screened Fitbits, I don't think we've really seen a notion that this company can cross over into watch territory, sport watch territory. And I'm seeing way more discussion about products like the Gear Frontier, the Gear S3 Frontier, and that Samsung is actually managing to make a case for why you would want to use that as a slightly more ruggedized smartwatch option. We have the Garmin Phoenix. We had the Casio. The Casio. I can't remember what the actual designation was.
It was letters and numbers.
Well, I mean, it was I think it was a G-Shock, but I forget, G-Shock Connected or G-Shock
WDR 10 or something.
Yeah, terrible, because I can't tell you what that product is, but I know it's a Casio.
It's good at fixing creaky doors.
Is it? You just use it as a hammer, and you just hammer in
Yeah. No. You WDR 10 or something. I think it was WDR 10.
You need to fix a rusty hinge. I get you.
Yeah.
No. So Fitbit has an opportunity here. They've got good IP. They now have a phenomenal software platform. I really do like, especially over the last 2 or 3 major updates for Pebble software have been phenomenal in providing extra functionality, streamlining the interface, and really working with richer applets and just silly things all smartwatches have some notion of speech to text, but I genuinely like the Pebble's implementation of this the best. So little things like that. This could be a huge step forward for Fitbit as a company. It's just there's just no trust. I don't trust that they're really going to take advantage of this. I think they're going to strip all these pieces out. They're going to look at the things that they think work. And I think that's going to be run through the same machine of developers and manufacturing elements and designers that already produce Fitbit products. And so we're going to end up with a couple little pieces and a couple little updates and additions, but it's still largely going to be the same Fitbit experience that we've come to know on other products. And that's my big fear, is that all of this will be for naught. And also not good for Fitbit's brand either, that they went through, they gutted this company, and they didn't really get anything to show for it.
So let's walk out on this developer type road. We have the Pebble developer blog here, and in part it says, in the short term, the Pebble developer experience remains unchanged. We're happy to report that our transition to Fitbit gives Pebble devs an exciting opportunity to reach and delight over 50 million users. The Pebble SDK, Cloud Pebble, mobile apps, developer portal, app store, timeline API, dictation service, messaging service, and firmware will all continue to operate without interruption. Further down the road, we'll be working to phase out cloud services, providing the ability for the community to take over where possible. So at least there is some sort of, kind of grassroots thing that they at least want to cultivate in terms of having a Fitbit missive, narrative, because Pebble, as I understand it, is the staff is being absorbed in. So
yeah, again, it's just really now we need to see what happens with an actual product launch, or seeing if Fitbit can incorporate that. And to the flip side, we just got this comment from Andrew Wallace on Twitter using the PN Weekly hashtag, and he says perhaps there will be a ROMing community for Pebbles now. And that I think with how open the software platform has been to developers in the past, that's definitely a possibility. But I think the main concern that we have are some of those server-side functions, which can hopefully be moved off of third-party servers and maybe just live on our phones. You know, maybe it affects performance, but we don't have to worry about a server halfway around the world getting shut down and suddenly, like, you know, speech-to-text translation just doesn't work anymore. Hopefully we can avoid some of those issues, or maybe better tie-ins with Android Wear. I know there was one software beta where Pebble was really utilizing the Android Wear notification system before they sort of wrote their own stack for it. And that was really compelling. And this is like an opportunity that maybe we can shift some of that stuff over. So it's Google Fit and more Android Wear support, and our Pebbles will get just at least a little bit of a lifeline while we're all looking for other solutions.
Yeah, but until then, we move on.
Until then, we'll all just get to be very sad. Let's blitz through a couple other tweets because we've got some great questions and some great comments here on Twitter. This is from the PN Weekly hashtag. Again, from Andrew Wallace. So, Jules, where do you think the future of wearables are found? So what do you think is coming down the pipe for other wearable technologies?
That is one big and it's a very tough thing to go, because we're very comfortable with right now with, all right, so how do we make this cellular? How do we make this 5G? I'm of the minority opinion that maybe we can do away with smartphones with these smartwatches, but I don't think realistically that happens. So until then, I'm not sure what kind of a good medium-term answer I can give, other than just where we are right now, at least. We're going to distribute more of our computing towards docks and stuff for the phones and other wearables, glasses and that. And in terms of watches, you know, it's going to, I mean, it's going to take a bigger brain than mine to figure out where.
I don't know, Jules, you got a pretty big brain there, buddy boy. I've seen that noggin. You're working with some top-notch gray matter upstairs. I know it.
Well, it needs plenty of sleep.
Yeah, we're never gonna get that. So yeah. I because I'm in the same boat. I think in longer term, and longer term could even be like 5 years. I'm not saying like way out there science fiction-y or anything like that. I think now there's this huge opportunity for a company to come in with like smart glasses, you know, feeding subtle but rich notifications to our line of sight in more discreet ways. And that would get me off smartwatches entirely. Like I would totally utilize that while driving a car. It would be far less distracting in many social situations. And I'd just go back to wearing a regular sort of nicer timepiece. And I'd probably stick with my Misfit as my little step tracker solely. Because I've been really liking this as just a pedometer.
Long term is going to be holograms. It's going to be holograms.
But that's why. Because I've been playing with, you know, the Lenovo Fab, and I'm like, man, if I could get some of this into a pair of glasses, just how rich AR content could be, even basic, very simple interactions with augmented reality style features would be phenomenal.
Yeah, but what if you don't want to be encumbered by glasses at the moment, and you just want something to like control from you don't need.
Everything comes with compromises. This is what's killing me about part of the discussion on like smartphones. And this actually leads me into another question here that we've got from Ryan Landis from PN Weekly. Now that smartwatches have been around for a while, how do you find them useful over just having a smartphone? And this is the thing that really bugs me about some of the critical conversations we've had about smartphones. Smartphones are these amazing portable computing platforms. I think they're absolutely terrible at notifying you as to what's going on in your digital sphere of influence. And I think they are entirely disruptive to workflow. I think they are disruptive to social interactions. You go to dinner and you see all these people sort of looking at phones and then sort of passively looking up at conversation and then being distracted by their Pavlovian digital notification machines. And I mentioned this in the video. I was one of the first people to get to crack into reviewing a Martian. And this isn't my favorite smartwatch, but as an experiment, I turned off the volume on my phone. And I said, you know what? I'm only going to use this to notify me as to what's going on. That was years ago. And I have never turned the volume, the ringer, the notifications back on my phones thanks to other smartwatches. The Martian included, but I just don't wear this as often. It's kind of big, it's kind of clunky. But Android Wear, Samsung Gears, Pebbles. I think I've got a couple other things here. Microsoft Bands, you know, all of these other solutions. My phone will never interrupt your conversation. My phone will never disrupt a social situation. Occasionally, you'll see the slight flicker from my wrist, and that can be distracting, but it's nowhere near as invasive as like the way that we check our phones. And now I never want to turn my phone screen on unless I'm gaming, reading, or unless I know there's a notification that requires my attention. Otherwise, my phone stays off, and I am much happier for it. And so that, to me, alone, that one feature of just richer notifications is completely worth the price of admission. All the other fun things are fun things. It's the icing. But the cake is pulling off one thing from my phone that my phone doesn't do very well and doing it better in a more discrete tactile form. That to me is huge. And that's why I'll always be a fan of some other type of accessory which complements my phone in those situations.
Liberty Sands on Twitter asks, so battery-wise, what's the next best legit smartwatch?
That's a good question.
Some ridiculously battery-sipping watches, and you know what? I mean, there's nothing I can really argue for other than Martian, because everyone else is just 2 or 3 days. That's pretty much the norm.
Yeah.
I really like this whole thing about e-paper and e-ink needs to like come into these things, because like that was made for displays like that. Yeah.
I think the Pebble, the screen refresh is still nowhere near as fast as an LCD or an AMOLED, but it's gotten pretty quick. And again, we have to talk about compromises.
And like for what it does. Like, do you really want to like scroll text?
Well, that's just it. So like, okay, so you look at Android Wear, and I think it's way too built on gestures and flicks. Like you slide through notifications, you flick things away. I would so be willing to sacrifice some of the fluidity of Android Wear. And see, and I know I'm not on the pulse for consumers, because consumers think that they want something flashy, bright, colorful, and responsive and super slick. But I would happily trade that, because I know if you pulled the LCD screen out of an Android Wear watch and you kept the battery size the same, you would completely eclipse the runtime of a Pebble. I think the battery in this Pebble is about half the capacity of the battery in my Huawei watch. Someone please correct me on that if I'm way off. I'm probably wrong. but the batteries are at that 300 to 400 milliamp hour capacity. You put in a more passive screen technology, and you'll triple the battery life, the current battery life of an Android Wear watch, easy. But you'd have to put up with a slightly less fluid interface. And again, that's the balance. That's the compromise. And there are people out there like me, like I want to be outside in California sun. I want to be at the beach. I want to be down in Santa Monica or Culver City. I want to be driving around in my car with the sunroof open, and I want to be able to see what's going on. And I can't do that from a Gear. I can't do that from a Huawei watch. I can't do that from my Asus. I can from my Martian, from my first generation Pebble, and from my Pebble Time. So that's always the real bummer. I think just for Liberty Sands, to kind of wrap up that question, if you want a screen, then you have to find other solutions. There was, I'm going to try and find it in my Twitter real quick. The problem is the display. And so once you factor in the display, that's going to kill battery life. But there is a company you can check out. I don't know how good they are. They're super, super indie. They are called Vector Watch, and it seems that they use some kind of e-ink or e-paper display. And they're claiming a 30-day battery life on a charge. Now, if you get away from screens, I can also say you can check out the Withings. Withings, the Activite, the newest version of that. Withings got bought out by Nokia. And so that has potential. And they have a little hybrid watch where it's kind of like the Martian. Oh, good deal, Jules. This is the Vector watch that you're seeing if you're watching the YouTube stream. The Withings, the newest Withings smartwatch is very similar to the Martian in that it's got a little sort of LED display and then analog arms for doing things like tracking your steps and fitness tracking and stuff like that. Yeah. And then lastly, to that same token, if you want to try a connected watch that doesn't have the same sort of rich notification system, I'm very curious. I'm going to try and get my hands on a Skagen. There's a Skagen hybrid watch, which only uses little dials and tickers and counters. And again, Jules is helping me out with the assist here on camera. But these little arms will swivel out on the side. So like you program it, you say like, hey, every time I get a text from my wife, I want the ticker arm to flick to the letter A. So it's almost like it's like a secret little code too. So it's a little bit more discreet. Oh. And no one's going to know what's going on unless you tell them. But those are just for you to track certain kinds of notifications. You have to pick what's most common, but that could also be another solution. And it's just a much more traditional, simple, clean. I love Skagen design. I was actually a huge fan of Skagen before they got into the connected game. So that could be another solution there.
But once they got it, it went down. Horrible.
Well, I don't know about horrible, but it's it is an interesting theory because I think the Fossil hybrid watch, because Fossil Group, I don't know if they own Skagen or if they just manufacture for Skagen. Sorry, I didn't know about that. Just go ahead. But I was going to say, because if you look, the Fossil hybrid system is very similar to the Skagen hybrid system, and the Fossil hybrid watch. I was just at the mall of all places, and my wife saw the new Android Wear Fossil watch, and we were asking the rep some questions about these different products, and the Fossil hybrid watch has a watch battery. And they say it should last for around 20 to 30 days on a single battery. But because this is a platform that they're really trying to boost, because 30 days is not a long time to be swapping your battery out, that if you buy a Fossil hybrid, they will replace the battery for the life of the watch. So all you have to do is send it in or take it into a Fossil retailer, and they'll replace the battery in your watch for free. Well, not for free, in the price of the watch. So that could also be something worth checking out too. I gotta say, I'm using a Misfit that uses tiny little watch batteries. I have not taken this off my arm since IFA earlier this year, and it's still at like 95% charge. And like just because of that, it's so much more effective for me than like the old Fitbit Flex that I used to use that I have to charge like every 3 or 4 days. I love this notion of not only do I not have to charge it for a week, I don't have to charge it for a month, or I don't have to replace the batteries for like 6 months. That's insane. So stuff like that, I'm becoming a much bigger fan of.
Yeah, well, we can all do a little bit less charging, I think, because I'm getting sick and tired of having to like plug into everything night after night. So. Yeah. Well,
and especially for the reviews that we got to do, man. I mean, like, if I'm working on a couple phones for a review, it means I've got several different watches. I've got several different phones.
If we could have smartphones that run on watch batteries, that'd be fun. I don't mean the capacity, but I mean like, come on, seriously, if something like that had the power or the lasting run of a watch battery, then. Jeez. All right.
So, lastly, before
I think we should do
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Jules.
Oh, okay. No, I was about to move us on.
Oh no!
What were you going
Just
to
real
say?
quick before we leave the topic of smartwatches. One, I really want to hear from you folks out there in the Pocketnow community. Just what you think you might do if you were a fan of Pebble, if you were considering a Time 2, and now that rug's just been pulled out from under you, or if you're currently using another smartwatch and you're really digging it, or another fitness tracker that you've been able to get some of those other features on. We do have one last comment here from Panzer Z on Twitter using the PN Weekly hashtag. And smartwatches need to start using the Sony and Casio screen tech, where it has both an LCD and a reflective layer for daylight viewing. And I would love to see another company sort of take that and continue to improve it. It was super sad. I talked about this. I don't have it here next to me. It's actually on the floor behind me under that table. One of my first, like killer smartwatches, the one that almost never left my wrist was the Qualcomm Talk. And that used a screen technology called Mirasol, where again, it didn't look super great when you were indoors, but then you would take it out under direct sunlight and the colors just popped off of the screen from reflecting light off of the face of the watch, and it was so much more effective than an LCD or an AMOLED display. And even when I just retired it this year because there haven't been any new software updates. Hangouts doesn't really work on that watch. I couldn't get my text messages or reply via voice anymore. And even at the end of its run, it's years old, that watch was still getting around 4 to 5 days on a single charge, just because you didn't need to use a backlight to overpower the sun on that watch screen. And I totally agree. I mean, if we had any other kind of hybrid solution, dual screen layer solution, even if it caused it to be a little dimmer in some conditions, the biggest problem I think most watches face is daylight. So I would definitely love to see Sony and Casio, that style solution, continue to gain traction.
Can I share a sad story with you? Because
you absolutely can, Jules. It seems like it's the night for it.
Yeah, if we're going to go all the way with this segment, then we might as well. So I actually pre-ordered a Chronos and actually got it. Unfortunately for me, the Android app is still not ready as I last checked. So I was basically, I already had this Chronos disc, which is a disc that you can press on, and it has multiple LEDs so that it shines different colors for different notifications. It also does different vibration patterns as well for that. And you could attach it to any watch. And I had a good little Timex Weekender plastered under it. And although the band is like a continuous band, it's not a segmented band, so you kind of had to stick the little disc under the band and to the back of the thing. Like I was still, I was still loving it. It was still nice. I just it was still useless because I got
because you didn't have the app,
the disc, and I didn't have the app. So that's there, and I'm wearing it, and I'm whole whirlwind for me because I went to between Boston and New York and Charlotte, and that I was at Hayato Huseman's place for Thanksgiving, and I forgot to wear my watch when I woke up and left the house. So Hayato, you still have that? You try it out. I suggest that you try it out. It's not, if you can get your iPhone 6 Plus to pair to it and see what happens. Like please. Also, maybe I'll pay out of my own pocket to buy a review from you, and we'll see what goes on there.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Hayato Huseman, utter thief, dirty
cheater,
dealer of watch technology. Shame.
Because and the way he does it is by making me forget about it.
Well, by being a gracious host for my favorite holiday of the year and then stealing your shiz. Yeah.
I mean, he took me out to, lunch afterwards. We had sushi. It was nice. It was awesome.
I know. I'm going to butter him up with some sushi, and I'm going to steal that dude's watch. Is how I do. And I'm pretty sure that's how Hayato speaks, too, right? He's all
definitely
straight street.
No, yeah. No, well, you have to include the word "fam" every other sentence. So
I got you, fam.
I got you, fam.
Let's move on before this gets too racial
To
objectionable. We've got happier news though, because this next story I'm stupid excited about is we got our first sort of controlled look at Windows 10 emulation on Qualcomm hardware. That we got to see. Yeah, there's my news tab. That's rock and roll news right there for you. So yeah, Windows 10 emulation. This is one of those things we're in that weird transition space for the future of Windows 10 on mobile devices. And we got to see a pretty slick demo of x86 emulation on ARM hardware. Which is easy for me to say.
Yeah, it's pretty simple stuff. So even though we're talking about 64-bit ARM chips these days and more capacity to do things, it's x86, so we're talking about Win32 apps. So not as much capability here, but at least there's that. I mean, you saw if we wait around a little bit longer on the YouTube feed, we'll be able to see Photoshop being used in very competent frame rates. So there's that. There's DirectX gaming going on a little bit, even though it was just like there was no gameplay. It was just a little rotating screen thing around the character.
Right.
And
I love
I mean,
run that too. The voiceover is like, "Look, it's amazing. It runs great." You're like, "Well, it's not, but that does look pretty good."
It looks good, and it's running. There's that. I'll give you credit for that. But hey, we're only and like to give them even more credit, we're talking about a Qualcomm Snapdragon 820. Microsoft and Qualcomm, jointly announced this for future chipsets. So if we're going to imagine anything, it's going to be with the 830, 835, which is going to come first for some reason, and other things along the way. This, it's been a halo feature that might signal the upcoming Surface phone. We're hearing that thing is going to get the Snapdragon 835. We're not sure how much RAM we're dealing with. 6 gigs of RAM might be able to do it for us. 4 gigs of RAM even could help out. I mean, demo had 4 gigs of RAM and it did pretty well. There's also something to consider with Continuum, because that rumor about the prototypes that we saw mostly worked with Continuum, and we're not exactly sure if you ever really want to run full Windows 10 desktop on even like 6 inches of screen. So
yeah, that's true.
We're going to have to think about how distribute. I mean, single computing, like a single computing unit distributed across multiple screens. Is that really our future ahead, or am I being a poor visionary of what's to come?
No, I mean, so again, we have to have that pros and cons conversation, but I think there's still every opportunity for Microsoft to deliver a one OS per person kind of strategy. And I still think Microsoft is in a good, not as good as when we were first talking about Windows 10 going to phones and desktops. We all had kind of that hope that they were going to nail it out of the box, which apparently it took them 2 years to figure some of this stuff out.
We trashed them for like half an hour on last week's show, mind you.
I mean, it was mostly constructive criticism, I believe. I don't believe we trashed it. No, so I still believe that there's an opportunity. Again, the fear is, one, will they be able to execute timely and consistent updates? Because this is what is killing Microsoft in this space, is that they disappear for years and then come out with something else. And then by the time that's out, oh, well, just hold on for another couple more years and then we'll give you what we really want you to use. So they always seem to be working from a deficit. And two, they really need to get after customer outreach, because they've been absent from the space for so long that if they have any hope of this kind of stuff, which I think is really cool, x86 emulation on ARM that works this well is phenomenally cool. But we're not going to be able to make up that deficit as editorialists. Microsoft needs to lead the charge in communicating with customers why this might be something they want to check out. And those are historically two things Microsoft has been very poor at. It's usually not can they make good products, it's can they really communicate with their customers what's going on, and can they update in a timely fashion? And that's where I'm concerned. But seeing this demo gives me a little hope that hopefully they've got the pieces in the right place for at least the technology side of it. And then we can always hope for some kind of miracle that they'll be able to advertise it well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's full Windows 10. I'm not sure what kind of maintenance needs to be done on that, emulation bridge, but certainly it does take much of the load that they had to do for mobile out of the door. So there's that going on. There's also talk of eSIMs and how Terry Myerson, he's chief of hardware at Microsoft and Windows, says that it's important. He's always said that it's important for Windows to be in the air, in cellular,
right,
in ARM chips. So it's it's good to see that.
Well, and that also goes to Nadella being something of a server guy. That infrastructure. Yeah. It goes I think more in keeping with his vision for where Microsoft could go as a company, getting all of their services on every platform, so it doesn't matter where you are. You're interacting with Office or OneDrive or all of these other services. Obviously they screwed the pooch on Skype, but Windows 10 as a service makes a lot of sense. I don't find fault with that idea. I've obviously found fault in their execution so far.
I'm just saying that the whole software consolidation might be able to help them ease out of the whole Windows 10 mobile and to focus on Windows 10 as just a one entity that has all the universal apps, or at least the 86 stuff that everyone needs. So
right.
I mean, it's going to be tough thinking about the communication as well, because is it enough to see just this one phone going to multiple docks everywhere and see it compute amazing things, or is that not enough for people to stare at?
It's not just the phone for me. I think it breathes new life into all of Microsoft's mobile strategy. Like if you pick up some of like the Lenovo tablets that have been utilizing Atom chipsets, I think there's an opportunity to shake up what Windows can do on other manufacturers' hardware. So maybe it's a little less difficult for a manufacturer to develop a mini tablet or one of these ultra thin hybrids and not be forced to use an x86 chipset, instead using a more readily available Qualcomm hardware,
power efficient, kind of thing,
or something more power efficient. Exactly. So that's also one of the things that I think helps Microsoft is being able to shake up what other manufacturers can do with the hardware they already have. Like if I'm an ASUS and I'm looking at one of their Zen tablets and thinking like, oh well, I could very easily do a dual OS strategy and not have to redesign or use different hardware. That I think would be appealing for Microsoft, because I think part of their mobile strategy is still a bit interrupted by Windows 10 not playing well with ARM chipsets.
Well, we're sort of left hanging in the air too about this HP stack or Dell stack.
Yeah.
Where it was, they had an x86 chip going on there, but it's just, it was all about space constraints and seeing how, they would approach the hardware side of things has just been a challenge. And, the software is no issue. And do you think just, people, the manufacturers shouldn't just put their bullhorns to the wall on this instead of, trying to do a software trick?
Well, man, that's a tough question to answer, actually. I don't know. I think some developers are just going to be in wait and see mode. like kind of where we all were with universal apps. Part of this is just what do we expect from Microsoft in terms of support, in terms of guiding the market, and then also what will consumers respond to. And I also wouldn't underestimate the effect of businesses still. Like, I think we've been in a culture and a climate for a little too long where businesses have been adopting consumer solutions and trying to make them fit. And sort of proper Windows 10, this kind of goes to something that Panzer Z just tweeted using the PN Weekly hashtag. There isn't really a Windows 10 mobile anymore. It's now just Windows 10, since the mobile code is in Windows 10 proper now. And we're talking about emulation for x86 and what we're going to do to shake up that platform. And you look at what HP has sort of committed to doing. You look at Alcatel delivering a Windows 10 handset, and some of the other conversations we've had surrounding these conversations, and enterprise still seems to be an area in search of a solution. So I don't have a good answer for your question, Jules, and that was a rambling examination of sort of the landscape of the product. But I keep coming back. I think there's every opportunity. I think there's this huge potential, but we've been talking about Windows potential in mobile for a while now.
I know. I understand. I mean, they do talk about, hardware release sometime in the next year. So, like, if but heaven forbid they say, or they let things drop, or they just make a big announcement saying it's delayed, I think the hope is, I really see. I'm in the same position as you now, where I'm just like, is it really too good to be true at this point? But I think it's going to be there. It's going to be. We're on the tracks, and the station's right ahead.
Well, and I'm hoping that what we see in these early demos, because obviously this is I use the word controlled demo as a very targeted phrase, because they were not straying off script. Everything was very cleanly being produced. They pull up Photoshop and they ran one filter. They weren't really, editing multiple layers in a proper Photoshop project. I mean, again, this is a promising start, but we have every expectation that, if you were to really try and run this stuff hard, it probably would have issues. This is also going to your point, Jules, from Ryan Landis. PN Weekly, it seems like Windows' Swiss Army knife OS approach on all types of hardware will lead them back to bloated and slow software. And so this is where my hope is, if we've got a company who's executing optimization well, we should actually see performance improvements across all stages of hardware. But of course, that's a very easy thing for me to say, which is proven difficult for tech companies in the past to actually execute between mobile and desktop and laptop and all these other flavors. So there's every opportunity also for Microsoft to fail miserably, and that would be sad.
Well,
sad trombone.
Hey, Microsoft can do whatever they want at this point, because I'm still haven't bought their phones. There we go. I'm on that 950. And speaking of phones, we should probably pivot to another phone. Well, I'm going to take this hoodie off. Like an actual phone.
Yeah, like a real phone that will probably exist at the beginning of next year. And Jules, can you talk us through this while I take this hoodie off? Because my wife is now running the heater in our apartment and it's way too warm.
Oh, wow. That's something that should not happen in LA. Anyways, so we have new words going about of this LG G6 from our I wish to say my friend, but I'm not sure where we are at right now. Android Police's managing editor, David Reddick, and he's been tweeting about this thing of all glass chassis. Now, if you've been wondering where you've heard that from, well, I mean, you've seen it in recent flagships. It doesn't feel recent at all now, because we've seen like 6 or 7 of these glass sandwich kind of things with the stainless steel rim going on.
Yeah.
We are hearing about it with the Apple, at least one model of the iPhone 8 or whatever it will be called next year. One of those is going to have like an OLED display and, this oversized OLED display that's going to be absorbing the home button, and it's all glass so that you'll see it all, and it's going to be like phone orgasm heaven or something.
I don't know about phones, but man, I don't think I'd mind going to orgasm headphone pocket.
Well, there's that. There's also water resistance. No, wait, that's another rumor. But it was rumored about prior to that. Let's talk about friends. It has no friends.
Well, but no. So I mean, doesn't this seem like what we're seeing for some of these rumors on an LG G6 is taking that limited edition? Was it only in Japan? Was it the V34?
Yep,
it was like a mini V20. And then making it a glass-bodied phone, sort of copying Samsung there, and then just releasing that. I'm of the mind that you could take the V34 and just make it the G6. So if you made a mini V20 and we lose the removable battery, that would make me sad. But we'd gain enhanced water resistance, and that would make me happy. You could just call that the G6, and I would be perfectly happy with that phone.
With a headphone jack.
And with a headphone jack. Yeah. because we've been talking about some other rumors too. Actually, I'm going to say that's an easy way to pivot just directly into our next story too. Sure. We have been talking about rumors that Galaxy S8 might not arrive with a headphone jack, that Samsung might get rid of that. Jules, you were mentioning the screen technology building in the home button, and now we're getting word that Samsung might be partnering with Harman Kardon to improve the speakers.
Not Harman Kardon, just Harman, because
just Harman.
It's an entirely different company. It's more connected to audio.
I'm on the wrong page then. I was getting way more excited than I think I maybe should have been.
Well, I mean, Harman is also somewhat known for not connected audio, audio as well. And Samsung acquired them, or is in the middle of acquiring them right now for $8 billion, Connecticut-based group. And it sounds like the Galaxy S8 will take a more forward approach to sound. It's going to have front-facing speakers, I believe, and also Harman branding. They want and another, sort of proprietary branding that, HTC did their boom sound, Samsung.
Copy that.
Galaxy sound or something, I'm not sure. And also in the mix here, we have different words of. We had a whole splat of rumors with Sam Mobile, I think. It was talking about USB-C, no headphone jack, as was rumored for like everyone else. It feels like this is the new norm now, and I'm already it. Also, 2K display. We're still going with a Quad HD instead of 4K, although there will be a change in the subpixel formation. It won't be pentile. It will be the standard RGB, and that will result in about 50% more. Yeah, 50% more color depth. So, hey, I mean, you get your changes and roundabouts, but what do you think? What's your first evaluation of just, pure speculation?
Well, again, we're engaging in wild speculation. Any improvement to Samsung audio would definitely be welcome. I have to say, for as well-rounded and as much as I really did enjoy my time on Galaxy S7, Jaime was a big fan of the Galaxy S7 Edge. The audio game was really weak this year. It was one of the lowest performers for our headphone audio, and I know that's not really going to be solved by moving to USB-C, but again, doing something, shaking something up, stereo speakers, that would be fun to have on a Galaxy, and I would definitely be looking forward to that.
I would argue that it's almost, a requirement with VR stuff, considering that we've been talking about this phone as a somewhat project daydream. VR is Android's newest platform for virtual reality. So in order for that to, get together display, great sound to go along with that, and I think this puts another measure towards getting that multimedia experience up.
Well, yeah, the notion that, because I'm trying to rack my brain, I want to say that there was some version of the Galaxy S2 which had a proper RGB stripe display instead of the Pentile AMOLED screen, and that was back when phones had like it wasn't half VGA. I forget what the resolution was, like WVGA or something like that.
Yeah,
but it was something like 800 by 640. Like one of those TV resolutions, not like what we rock now with HD screens. But that would actually be a pretty exciting step up for that screen technology. Jaime and I were in New York for the Note 7 launch, and they did a whole section of the Note 7 launch using the Gear VR, and both of us were very underwhelmed by the quality of the video stream that was being sent and how apparent it was that you could see sort of the graininess or the pixelated display that gets compounded when you play with lower resolution screens like the one on the OnePlus 3. I know AMOLED is my preferred screen technology, but you put it under magnification at 1080p on a 5.5 inch screen and it looks terrible. It's just so bad. So if we can start moving away from Pentile and over to RGB stripe, that would be huge. That to me would be an exciting enough update to say, let's forget about 4K for this generation. It's okay if we skip it.
Yeah, and just a quick vacation, I believe it was all Galaxy S. It was just a standard thing for RGB and S2.
Hot. Yeah, I want that. I want it.
So hard.
So bad. I want it so bad. So let's move on.
Something you want so bad? Is this something you want so bad?
Actually, I was just about to say, from something I want so bad to something I really want to try. It's well, for those of you who are watching the video stream, we just pulled up a photo of the DTEK70. And BlackBerry is bringing back their QWERTY keyboard, and it's just a straight candy bar. It's not like a slider like the BlackBerry Priv was. But if you liked those little tic-tac keys, BlackBerry is looking like the DTEK70 is going to be the solution for you. This is a phone that I think I could probably get my wife on. She was a huge BlackBerry fan.
I'm loving this design. It's sort of like a mix between the classic and the Passport's keyboard, and then there's also that
Passport.
That little top chin with it's very defined, and then there's like this beveled thing going down the sides where it seems like it's just it's boxing this weird sort of way, and I have questionable taste. I understand. But this, the hardware keys as the middle, like it's instead of the trackball, it's the hard navigation keys, and then this somewhat. I'm not sure what aspect ratio this display is, but it just seems so unique. And if anything, it's my penchant for different and not necessarily like the best
but I want something that the word unique absolutely nails it. I want something which I'm tired of all phone companies trying to make soft around the edges, friendly consumer all-rounders. You pick up a V20 and it doesn't matter how much singing and dancing a cool cat like Joseph Gordon-Levitt does. The phone is not playful, giddy, and fun. It is a workhorse. It is an uncompromising multimedia workhorse. It's not productivity like a Note, but it's not like, hey, let's go dance in a fountain. That's not the V20.
You market it like that, and you get no one. I'll be honest.
Right.
That's if you don't market to general public Joe, then I saw two. All right. I mean, I saw two people on the subway with V20s in Hong Kong. Like that.
All right.
That's an occurrence rate that's like skyrocketed here.
You have seen exactly the same number of people with V20s in the wild as I have. So between the two of us, we have seen 4 V20s out in the wild, thanks to singing, dancing, playful, wacky commercials.
As opposed to what, like 8, 10, 20?
I guarantee you that if they had taken a more direct, a ballsier approach, maybe something along the lines of what HTC was trying to do in calling out other companies, I don't know, just something that I think was more in keeping with what the device actually delivers, that I think it would have been a more interesting conversation. So we look at something like this DTEK70, and I'm excited just because they are looking at focusing on a specific demographic of smartphone consumer. That by definition means that this is not going to be an all-rounder. If you were worried about your BlackBerry Priv, like what am I going to do to follow up that phone? This phone looks like it could handle that. This phone looks like it might satisfy that. And this is what's encouraging, is that this strategy of BlackBerry, we were all really nervous about them not making their own hardware, but this is a promising step in the right direction. Again, I think there's still another year or two away from general consumers taking them seriously, but it's because of stuff like this that I think we're going to be more apt to give them a proper try than if they came out and said, oh, Blackberries are so much fun now. Remember when you used to do BlackBerry Messenger? It's neat. Like no one's going to buy that phone. But you come out with this and you say, hey, you really need to get some stuff done. You want a proper keyboard. It's probably got like a touch sensor instead of a trackball on it. Awesome. Go for it. This is the phone that you want to use, and they'll be the king of that niche.
Yep. I just read, so I know I should mention that the keyboard is immovable. It doesn't slide out or anything, but the screen is 4.5 inches, which, like, I understand that, this is a tall device, and it's more, it's more of a traditional, I would guess like maybe 5.2 or 5.3 inch kind of regular screen
overall
device
size.
If you want to like overall size. But even with just like full HD, so there's good pixel density going on here, 4.5 inches. I would want that screen. That's been a long-standing desire of mine to just get that back and because for me, it's not just a smartphone isn't something that I just use and put in my pocket and whatnot. It's something that I sometimes vacantly hold in my hand and just turn on as I need it. And to be able to do that without having to like press any, like I'm just playing around with mostly the screen and messing out with my fingerprints. To do that with, maybe just, mindlessly toying around the keyboard.
And think about going back to those old BlackBerry classics and stuff. I mean, how great was the one thumb experience on those phones? You could program any key to be a shortcut to an app or to a contact. I remember, like, my wife was just always so keyed up. Like, it was one button press for her to call her sister. It was one button press for her to call her mom. It was one button press for her to call me. She loved that kind of customization because it was super simple. It was super straightforward. And she would pull the phone out of her purse and would already be dialing because of the tactile feedback of the keyboard without having to use two hands, unlock the phone, look at the screen, navigate to an app, any of that mess. It was just pap, and she was talking to someone. And I don't think any other all touchscreen smartphone has been able to replicate that. So I'm very, very curious and very, very positive on BlackBerry coming out with a slightly smaller but dedicated hardware keyboard device.
If you want to frame it as a one-hand device, then this is way less of a one. I mean, I mentioned the navigation buttons, the hardware navigation buttons. If you frame it in terms of one-handed use, I really wish the trackball was there.
You don't think the keyboard's going to be touch sensitive like other BlackBerries have been?
I really want a clicky trackball.
You want to get back to the that makes sense.
Yeah. That kind of paradigm was really going to be if that helped.
You're talking like old Android.
Old school.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Man. Good times, man. I think Google missed the boat by trying to compete with those iPhones. I think they should have kept their sights on BlackBerry.
Well, yeah, G1 is best one.
Well, we should move on. Let's cover these. We've got some other sort of business news that we can chew through really quickly here. We're already running a little long. Right up first.
My goal tonight.
You don't need to spend a lot of time on this one.
My goal tonight is to make you sleep on the podcast. That's the deal.
It won't take much, man. I don't know. I've got a stomach full of kombucha. I'm going to be all burpy here in just a bit.
Well, all right. So, Japanese telecom company SoftBank is investing $50 billion and creating 50,000 jobs in the U.S. The CEO and founder, Masayoshi Son, went to Trump Tower, met with President-elect Donald Trump, and said that he will basically do such a thing. One Wall Street Journal says that possible acquisitions may take place, as much as up to $30 billion in value. And of course, we know SoftBank in the U.S. as Sprint's parent company that bought it out in 2013 and tried to merge with T-Mobile. It didn't do so. One hopes, or one, inside Sprint hopes that another chance for Sprint T-Mobile merger will happen because of Donald Trump's regulation lax attitude, and he's basically come into office now. So there's the FCC, at his will, at his finger.
Well, and especially with recent moves like AT&T and DirecTV, this would be the perfect time for a company like SoftBank to find a media partner to bolster Sprint's catalog.
I mean, there's the blowback now with the whole media partner thing, because AT&T and DirecTV, not DirecTV, well, DirecTV now, but also HB, Time Warner. I was trying to think of the company. But there's a whole lot of scrutiny that goes into that, and it's been bipartisan. So we're not really likely going to, see. It's going to be a tough time seeing where the whole $85 billion merger lands.
Right. No, I completely agree, just because it's been so high profile. But I think in a couple months, we're probably going to be seeing government that's a bit more permissive to some of these moves. So I don't think it's much of a waiting game.
And also with T-Mobile, its CEO John Ledger. I can't help it. I'm sorry, John. Leger. He has expressed some attitudes. Deutsche Telekom doesn't want to be selling it because of its massive growth. But it does, it's not really. I'm not sure if in terms of a media partner or anything, like they said that they're offering the best kind of cellular value going on, and that if there's any kind of zero rating that they want to do, like they did with Binge On, they'll do it with partners, so that they don't have, and this is me speaking, but they don't have to deal with any net neutrality or arguments that they are gaming the system for their own gain. So there's that. So that may be more favorable towards a merger situation going on there, and taking on the Dumb and Dumber AT&T and Sprint. Not Sprint, Verizon. Big Red. Cheered every day.
That was great.
I also should crow.
Moving right along. Just when you thought we were done with these old, brutal patent lawsuits, the Supreme Court of the United States has weighed in on Samsung v. Apple. And when are we done? Are we done with this now?
No,
is this over?
We're not done.
No.
There's a unanimous decision, but it's not over. So in this case, it favors Samsung. This Apple v. Samsung fight is not about the slide to unlock and other software interface features, but of design, iPhone design that stems all the way back to S2 or something. All those eras.
I thought it was like S2 and S3 especially, where Apple was really getting its undies in a twist.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we're talking about 5 years ago. I was a baby back then. so I would have been paying attention. But
Like smartphones were barely usable back then.
yeah. Oh boy. But the court's opinion is that basically what we're dealing with is an article of manufacture, and whether or not the copy of an article of manufacture should apply to, like if we're determining damages, should it apply to the parts, the patent that at hand, or the whole of the phone? You can't really get a part of the phone
right.
commercially. You can't just like get a screen or something like that. So
I just want the side chamfered edges of an iPhone 3GS. That's all I want. I'm just going to use that.
And apparently, it sided with Samsung, saying that that none of the, while it is it did infringe on those elements, that none of these elements really contributed to the whole of Apple's profit, or Samsung's profit, excuse me, during that time. So basically, it wipes out the current $399 million damages total.
Right.
There still may be, I mean, it's still to be determined how much Samsung may pay, if anything at all, because...
But this is a win for Samsung in taking some of the bite out of Apple's claim, though.
Yeah, it does. But the Supreme Court is now tossing it back down to Federal Circuit to determine a legal test on what should constitute an article manufacturer and a component, and what the deal is in terms of dealing with damages when something is being copied.
Well, but this is exciting for Samsung, because they were making the argument, and I'm grossly oversimplifying here, but they were making the argument that Apple was saying that the entire sort of profit margin for those lines of Galaxy phones should be affected by this ruling. And Samsung was saying, like, no, you need to be able to part out the damages to the Apple brand if you're claiming this type of infringement. And it would seem like the Supreme Court agrees with Samsung there.
Yeah. So much for those Federal Circuit appeals people.
Yeah, take that, you lesser courts being lesser, not as supreme. But that's enough talking about there, because Apple has some other issues where we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the podcast, where there were some problems with iPhone 6 and 6S's sort of randomly shutting off in China. And it seems like it could be just because of air getting into parts of the phone that it shouldn't have been, which that kind of stuff sounds like it's silly, but that makes me really nervous about manufacturing ever thinner, increasingly more complicated and powerful components. If a gap like that could serve to shut a phone off, that's kind of problematic.
So this seems to be a QA issue, and in terms of standards, it seems to be one of those issues where it's like, Apple sets a high standard, I guess. Maybe that's my speculation, but apparently a central here we go from Adrian's article. A central battery's components exposure to controlled ambient air for too long before the component was loaded into the battery pack. So basically, I think if it were for me, I think it's just like rotting or rottage going on, for potential rottage, and talking about China. So being that it's quite subtropical in the southern, those parts exposed too long to humid, destabilized air. And
interesting.
There's that. I'm not sure if that's the real, if that's, that's a problem that is, is the main cause, or they found it out to be somehow. But yeah, I'm kind of just, I'm not sure where Apple wants to take it from there.
Well, but you bring up a point, because I think we're going to be seeing other companies sort of building on some of the things that Apple has done in this space. Like, I think it would be entirely reasonable. We mentioned this during our Microsoft discussion last week. Let's say Microsoft releases a Surface phone instead of waiting 3 years to release a follow-up phone, maybe adopt more of a TikTok strategy where you can use the same chassis and the same screen, but then you just change out the logic board or the little PCB that has the processor on it to update from year to year. Sorry, excuse me. When I think you know, Apple, I think, has sort of shown us a business model where they can build on a phone model from 1 year to the next before having to change the design overly. And it looks like this, I mean, if your hypothesis is correct, that looks like something that could be affecting the way that these devices are manufactured. Let's say you engineer a whole bunch of cases for phones and they're just sitting in a warehouse, you know, like how we store stuff like that, how we store batteries, how we store camera components, that kind of stuff we need to maybe take a better look at, because I think it's going to be affecting devices into the future when we've got stuff kind of sitting around. I mean, you know, if you buy a smartphone battery, an internal battery, if it's been sitting on a shelf for too long, you're not really going to get your money's worth. That battery is already starting to degrade. So that could be, I think you're absolutely right that this absolutely could be one aspect of Apple's strategy, which might be affecting the long-term stability of some of their products.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're going to talk about components, I'd rather talk about the bigger ones, like the camera.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're talking about Huawei's subsidiary Honor. Going into this little experiment.
That was a great transition. It's like, man, where's he going with this?
Yeah. This is what's happening here. So, from rumors, we're talking about this Honor Magic. It's supposed to be a concept phone. They say. What's official is the release date. It's going to be December 16th. That we learned from Honor's Chinese site, and apparently, what's being told of is a curved display from Samsung, a battery that quickly charges 5 minutes halfway, and then there's this stipulation here: no camera nor speaker on the device body.
Interesting.
Now, yeah, you kind of have to wonder where these things go, whether they become accessories, and whether or not this whole thing goes into a whole modular craziness that the Moto Z wants to do and is doing. But if we're just talking about like core, that's the more interesting thing. If we're talking about core features like speaker and camera, I'm wondering where the heck this is going, and it'd be whether or not it'd be more interesting for me. Because this, you know, if we're just going to talk about, you know, slap on, slap off modular accessories, I think 2016 has helped play that kind of thing out, and we've already established the players or player that we've already established. So there you go.
Well,
but
I think there's every opportunity. I still think there's every opportunity for. This is the word of the podcast: opportunity. When you hear that word, scream real loud. You could peel some pieces back off of the phone. I think too many smartphone manufacturers are nervous about this concept. The smartphone has to be everything to everyone. Some of these early experiences with modular devices have been a touch underwhelming, but that doesn't mean that the idea isn't sound. And especially as more devices are better utilizing USB Type-C connections, USB OTG, and faster data throughput just through the USB plug, let alone anything else it might be coming up with as a proprietary connector. You could do something interesting. You could shake up the market. The smartphone is just a mobile communications device, and it connects to a GoPro style camera that clips onto your sunglasses. So you get that perfect eye level shot no matter where you're taking photos and videos. Or they're going to work with a manufacturer to deliver really high quality audio solutions or wireless solutions. Or, you know, there are things that we could be doing here to shake up the smartphone paradigm and peel a couple pieces, just like I've been saying about, like, you know, notifications. You can pull notifications off of your phone and they'll be better for it. We could have a similar conversation about audio. We could have a similar conversation about camera tech.
And by the way, a note to our editor-in-chief, Tony. Hey, I'm in Hong Kong. Whatever they're doing in China for the next 3 months.
Get Jules out there.
Hi there. I have a visa. You don't have to pay for the visa. I can go back and forth. I'm a resident. I'm a Hong Kong resident. I have an identity card. Okay, you can just do
unfortunately, because I think they are going to be having an event up in San Francisco. Unfortunately, I can't make it, so I'm hoping they'll take pity on us, maybe send us some embargoed information so that we can still play with everyone else. But I was very
let's hope
impressed.
that information was not privileged as well.
Well, yeah, I don't think there was anything embargo-y about the fact that because we just said they're going to be doing the announcement on the 16th. That was
on the 16th,
yeah. I just had a panic attack. Did I say something stupid? No, I don't think I did. Yeah. I say a lot of stupid things, but I don't think that was one of them. But for I still have my Honor 8 in easy reach. I love this phone. I've been using the crap out of my Mate 9. So 2 phone releases this year. They've bought themselves a little credibility for me that I'm willing to go with them on an experiment now. I'll be curious to see what they have to announce.
Oh yeah, definitely. I wonder what the heck is going on with this Touch Wizard.
Oh, from what I hear, TouchWiz is dead. Long live the Samsung experience. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we've been talking about, or we haven't been talking about TouchWiz for a while. I mean, we mentioned it as the thing that is Samsung's software skin on Android. And over the years, I mean, we've seen it shed the whole kind of, all these gestures and all these obscure features that do not much good and only serve as like demo points. But hey, we've seen much more useful, terms like themability and, it's just a cleaner, brighter interface with easier to access features. And now we could say it's almost official, because we are talking about Galaxy Beta program, and they're soaking Android Nougat onto the Samsung Galaxy S7, S7 Edge, and the latest settings call out for the software is the Samsung Experience, and apparently it's on version 8. So I'm wondering where the rest of them are. Where
we missed versions 1 through 7, and I feel like we've missed out on something there. Maybe it's
subsuming TouchWiz's history, but I don't think that's a history that you want to take as your own.
Well, no. So we've sort of been dancing around this topic. I mean, wasn't Samsung a couple months ago? They were playing with a new streamlined version of their UI because they were experimenting with Vulkan APIs, so that the UI was going to be driven by graphics hardware, and they were seeing some positive steps in improving
very positive steps. Although that could be can be applied to most any other OEM if they invested the time in it.
Right.
I think that this update, that this Android Nougat update, this change of colors and whatnot, gives them a much better excuse of being able to just put up a new image and reinvent itself, as opposed to this they've stopped using TouchWiz in any of their app names, because I do believe they did use the TouchWiz name for some apps that all the way back then when I didn't have the phones. So yeah.
So again, opportunity and potential. I'm hoping we'll see something cool. If for anything else, I think TouchWiz has gotten kind of a bad rap. It's a lot like they've sort of prettied up EMUI on Huawei phones. So I'm a little less cranky about Huawei software, but just like TouchWiz, you don't really fully get a handle on just how much stuff is running behind the scenes, like how many of those software customizations are brought along because of EMUI or brought along because of TouchWiz. So looking at performance on the Note 7. I'm just hoping that the Samsung experience is at least a change in direction where they're able to focus on optimization and improving performance, because that's definitely one of the major benefits that we saw from the Pixel. You do stand to improve the consumer experience when everything's running as buttery smooth as you can make it.
Project Butter tried to do that all the way back then.
That's right. Oh, what a terrible name. So let's just quickly touch on this. If you're shopping a V20 in Canada, who should you buy it from, Jules?
This new place. It's called Freedom Mobile, and I originally put it here as like a breath mint kind of thing, and there's a whole story behind this. So I wasn't really prepared for the condensed version. But Freedom Mobile, it was formerly known as Wind. It was created about 7 years ago as part of a thing to, government initiative to improve cellular competition in the country. And it's been running as an SPA network. It's been independent up until this year when it was bought up by big media company Shaw. And now it has money to put towards actual LTE, and it's doing so with new LTE, band 66 so far, and it was, it was marketed as.
Is that the evil Sith band? That no, no Order 66. Is it just me? Order
66. No, it's just you. It's just you.
All right, good deal.
As well as
I deserve that. I had that coming. I should never have brought up the prequels. I have my Skywalker Ranch mug right here, but you're right. I'll back off.
I mean, there's no 51. I mean, there is a 51 in the article, and that's conversion rates of $200 in Canada to $151 in the United States. But that's just pulling at strings, so. Like, why even bother?
we shouldn't even bother mentioning the thing that we just mentioned. But let's wrap this up. We've got to get to this. I do want to talk about this last sort of special segment that we've got prepped on Apple.
$200 off because the LTE rollout, which was supposed to happen last week, or was it December 7th? I think. Yeah, no, or November 27th. No, that did not happen, and it was It was just a mess, and there was only these two phones, the ZTE Grand X4 and the LG V20, that were able to access LTE. So the apology, basically, is a $200 discount, and you can buy it outright for $799. So that's roughly, 600, 500-ish, high 500 territory, which is not that bad for an LG V20.
No, that's pretty good territory. Their loss is your gain.
Somewhat. I hope you like Band 66.
That's just it's the evil Sith.
Not sure if it's locked. Okay.
I love it. Okay, so I mean, I don't want to say real quick, but moving right along, one last special segment here. This was a story that we posted on Pocketnow.com, where we were talking about some analysts, some market watch, some research. And this is something we've been discussing on this podcast for a little while. Apple in the market position, looking at Apple as sort of a vanguard or an indicator of the tech sector economy health, and why I think some shareholders for Apple are starting to get a little concerned with their current business strategy. Is we've got this major phone milestone for them next year. It's the 10th anniversary iPhone, and I'm sure that's going to do well for Apple, but where do we go with the smartphone becoming such a saturated market, with sales sort of peaking, with sort of this plateauing happening, and with so much of Apple's profit margin being built on iOS devices? How should Apple weather future transitions, and what could they be looking to do? And it doesn't seem like anyone has any good answers. It seems like the few experiments that Apple has sort of disclosed, things like their attempts at making an electric car, a lot of those experimental platforms, those experimental business solutions, don't seem to be garnering a lot of traction internally. It seems like Apple right now is sort of content to toe the line, continue the status quo, and they're not putting a lot of effort into R&D. While they're sitting on a mountain of cash And I think that's making a lot of people, especially investors, very nervous as to what the future prospects for this company might resemble.
So what do you think the future prospects do resemble? I was going to just do a quick hot take thing, like 2-minute drills. So if you want to take the first one.
Well, I mean, like, what do you mean by 2-minute drills? Because even like 2 minutes seems like a long time to be talking about an individual idea. I mean, like, for example, I think Apple...
Well, the clock started, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. So for example, I think Apple as a media and entertainment company, I think they could do well in delivering some type of VR solution to complement something like Apple TV. That's not going to make up the difference in profit margins, because I think that's going to be another niche market. But Apple has been coasting on the success of the iPhone for too long in redefining what a consumer-driven smartphone should resemble, and they need to find other tech areas where they can do likewise. I don't think Apple can out Tesla, and now Tesla is even going to be facing stupid tough competition. Like Chevy is putting out a pretty cool looking electric car. You know, like, no, Chevy never would have done that without Tesla putting pressure on the market. So I think it's totally disingenuous for Chevy to be, oh yeah, well, we care about electric cars too. But we can always point to Tesla to say, hey, I mean, like, even if they go under in the next couple of years because of competition, at least they created a market that we can all appreciate if you're fans of EVs. Apple hasn't done anything like that for a while. So being able to redefine a product niche or carve out something new, like maybe AR, augmented reality solutions, maybe better accessories platforms, or just come back to delivering some really kick-ass computing solutions, desktops and laptops. Those are all market areas where I feel Apple could redefine itself without having to stray too far from what they already do well.
Wow, 100 seconds and boom, right there. So I guess for me, my issue with them is that everyone's been looking at Apple and trying to figure out what's the next iPhone and what's the next, one item that can be popularized by anyone, adults, children, and whatnot.
Right. Especially the whatnots. That's a huge demographic.
Definitely so. And you can't just have a touchable slab again, because that's already been done. You can't have a car because kids, even though, you're dealing with a good deal, like a, household purchase with plenty of potential margin per sale, you're not dealing with, you can't just have record-breaking sales in general, and the numbers just don't seem as sexy in that respect, just
right.
As a public, because we can't forget that Apple is a public-facing company. So what do they do? And it's that question that software, as you have said, is not going to make a difference up anytime soon. It's not going to. It's never been like the sexy thing to make margins off of. It wasn't It's sort of a lifeline issue in terms of that. It's like you get this computer and you get the software on it, and then you have to get more software, and you just keep loading more and more, and you have to pay monthly fees. It's just horrible. For me, I'm guessing it's wearables are kind of the stopgap for now. So they've been looking at good sales growth. Tim Cook said that it's the best quarter so far ever for the Apple Watch Series 2 has had a lot to help with that. Cellular radio, I think they might be able to pull off the cellular radio as well if they can shrink down the iPhone into that. So the Apple Watch. So there we go. 2 minutes and a few seconds, and that was a little late, but.
Well, and just to tack on from the few seconds that I had remaining from my time, I mean, look at what we just discussed with Honor potentially carving pieces back out of their phones. We live in an era where Apple is probably going to make a not insignificant sum of money on dongles and adapters. So why not do something like that do more like that for the iPhone too? We've got a trio of emails I want to chew through really quickly here, because there were some really great questions coming from
Great questions.
Great questions. Marriage.
Yeah.
Marriage is what brings us together today. From the podcast at pocketnow.com email address. I'm going to chew through this first one. This is Pocketnow Weekly Question from Carlos. Carlos sharing part of my name there, so that means he's obviously an amazing individual. He writes, "Hello, PN team. Thanks for taking my question. Here it is. I'm looking for a PMP that will actually fit in my pocket, so most modern phones won't do. I have a Sony Xperia Z3 compact, but the headphone port on that wasn't designed well. Is there a decent alternative to the iPod Touch, or am I stuck dealing with the horror that is iTunes? It has to be able to run Spotify as well as play all my music, mostly stored on my hard drive in FLAC, but I always convert when moving to my PMP anyway. Keep up the great work, y'all."
So that takes out the Walkman, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, maybe he can find an old Zune, something like that. I don't know. Is that
does it connect to Spotify? Does it have an app for Spotify?
No, I mean, like, this is tricky because the convenience of phones being music players has completely eclipsed my strategies for having a separate music delivery device. And the second I plugged headphones into an HTC or into an LG V10 or V20, I didn't really want to go back to a dedicated music player. So, Carlos, I'm sad to say, like, if you want that standalone hardware experience, the iPod is probably gonna be the most accessible, but I wouldn't count out a phone. Whatever might fit in your pocket, that's certainly a subjective measurement, which if you're having issues with an Xperia Z3 compact, that might be tricky. But I wouldn't count out some of these really killer audio solutions like an Axon 7 either.
I would say, like, get an older model HTC phone,
an
like,
M8.
M8, yeah, definitely do that. You don't have to get service on it. It's cheaper.
Yeah.
Up front, and you just get every little bit of it that you can. It's smaller.
You could also, I mean, like,
there's that too.
It depends on if you wanted to tinker with software. It's the headphone jack wasn't quite as loud, but the quality numbers were still pretty good. Like a Lumia 930 could probably also do you really well too. I remember liking that phone a lot also. I think the idea of an older phone, an older flagship phone that was good at audio for its time, would probably be a better solution, or at least a more flexible solution, than many of the standalone media players that you're apt to find these days. And speaking of my and you can use, well, and not only Spotify, but I mean, like, you could probably also find and good native FLAC playback. So maybe you don't even need to convert your files anymore. Yeah. You could just get a big old hunk and memory card, just dump them all on there and listen to them at full quality, which would be pretty rad also. So this is the next question. Was the real Nokia really that great? Ooh, that's going to be tricky. This is from...
Well, I actually wanted to just leap off to Haniko for a second, because
okay, we'll come back to this one then. So let's cover.
So this one's a big... So can I know why every company is eager to kill the headphone jack? Well, I know Apple could gain benefit from that, seeing that they could sell licensing to manufacturers to make Lightning port headphones, but why Android? Why do they want to do that as well? And I don't know why. I mean, it's Google mostly, because they set the standards for device compatibility, and they've been very much on the USB-C train. In which case, like, why does Google want to just get everyone onto the same, get everybody on that, on these specific specs? Why do they want to go for the USB power delivery spec and all that stuff?
I have a couple theories. Or no, not theories. Theories are scientifically used to explain and predict behavior in very large models. I have a couple hypotheses. So first of all, one, if someone has invested money into a decent pair of headphones, they're not apt to do that very often. The Nobles that I'm rocking right now, these are in-ear monitors. I've spent a lot on them. I'm gonna run them into the ground. I've had them for 5 years now. I'm not, or 4 years now, 4 or 5 years now, and I'm not looking to replace them. That's a very specialty issue. These are recording. This is a piece of recording equipment, not just sort of general consumer listening stuff, but more than just like sort of the crappy earpod style buds that some manufacturers might include, or just like the really disposable in-ear earbuds. If you want to motivate more purchases, I think moving to USB-C is one potential solution where now you can get someone when they're buying their phone, it doesn't have a headphone jack. They're going to be bummed out about it, but you know what? I need to get this new phone. This is an opportunity for them to upsell so that with every phone purchase comes another accessory purchase at the same time. Right now, in the early days of USB-C, I have been horrifically disappointed by the companies in the Android space that have moved over to USB-C. Over here somewhere, right here it is. I've got the HTC Bolt, and I had to tag this pretty hard during our full review because this uses only USB-C for the audio, and they include a really nice pair of earbuds. But this is not a universal USB-C audio standard. It's not like a pair of USB headphones or USB speakers. Yeah. They are using some of the extra pins in the USB-C port, in the USB-C connector, so that this is a proprietary solution, which, as far as I can tell, only works with the Bolt. So if I take these headphones and I plug them into the Thunderbolt port on my laptop, they don't work. If I take these headphones and I plug them into any other phone with the USB-C connector, they don't work. So in the short term, we don't have a standard, and that's going to be terrifically frustrating. I use words like horrific because we're losing one of the best cable connector standards of all time, the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. And we're gaining a very fragmented market in its place for this next generation of devices. Until we get proper USB spec, you need to have at least this kind of amp. You need to have at least this kind of DAC built into the headphones. So it doesn't matter what USB device you connect them to, but they'll work on any computing platform. That's what we need. And that's not what we're going to get. So I think in the short term, what we're looking at is the same kind of play that Apple's making. It's not necessarily licensing, but if you want your HTC Bolt to play good music, well, you got to buy some HTC headphones. And if you lose these, you know what? You can't use anything else. Nothing else is going to work. So you'll just have to go out there and buy some more. So that's the kind of thing that I think is going to be a very difficult issue for us to communicate to consumers as to what products are going to be compatible and what's a good investment. I want to look at this as being something kind of cool because these earbuds are very nice, but long term, that's not a great solution. And I feel your money could be better spent somewhere else.
Yeah, well, there's that. Until then, I mean, you got the LG G6, the LG V20. I mean, basically go with LG.
I mean, you know what? Or HTC 10. Tomorrow I'm going to be cutting up a video. 10, yeah. And honestly, if you're on Sprint, as cool as it might be to get better LTE radio reception, I just feel like so much of the HTC 10 is a better phone than the HTC Bolt. The phone uses a more powerful chipset. It's got a phenomenal headphone jack built in. It's got better speakers. I would be hard pressed to find any situation where I would pick the Bolt over the HTC, and that's going feature for feature for feature. And I think the only one I can come up with is slightly better water resistance. And that's not really enough. So I'm going to be revisiting the HTC 10 one more time because it just got a NuGet update. So be on the lookout for that video tomorrow or early Saturday. Oh, actually, congratulations. Your phone updated successfully to version 2.28.617. It just finished right now. That's awesome.
Wow.
So yeah, maybe I'll actually be able to get it done tomorrow. So
let's hope.
Those would be my recommendations.
Is that an unlocked unit or?
Oh, it is. Yeah, it doesn't have any carrier branding on it.
Does it have Nougat yet?
Oh no, that's literally what the update just finished. It just finished the Nougat
That was
update.
the Nougat. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because usually it would just, pop up the actual words and stuff. Oh man. Well, I was hoping that would be more of a celebration to end the podcast, but no, we're actually like questioning Nokia's heritage here. So I got this one from Renato Laporte, and he writes in.
Words.
Yeah, really like the show. Long-time listener, although I began following the live and commenting on the Twitters. And he says that he's trying to make a point about not doubting the quality and innovation of Nokia, but focusing on consumer products. Nokia had indeed really good phones with great specs, but during my short lifetime, I could say that I've seen the Nokia hype wearing off for quite a while, at least a few times, at least in Europe, which should have been its most important market. Around the beginning of the century, when Nokia was out there bringing horrendous phones with dubious functionality, we saw Siemens Mobile, RIP, taking the teen market, me in that time, with affordable, cool phones, colors, design, back to the market. Sony Ericsson also too. But Nokia was just boring, as it seems to him. Maybe it could have been just a whole different audience thing, going for the wider appeal. But who knows? I mean, we make, like, remind ourselves, like, we made a big deal about the 3310 and its, we memify it
Indestructibility
in its glory. But back
right.
then, like, it's kind of like a 2020 hindsight. Or it's like a dead author, Yeah. They're not famous while they're living, and after they die. Oh,
well,
look,
and I think so. So I think Nokia got caught up in. I think Nokia, like a number of companies like BlackBerry, ultimately became victims of their own initial successes in trying to bring mobile computing to the masses. So, some of those N series phones, some of those N90 series phones were amazing products for, like really maximizing the limited network bandwidth that we had at the time, bringing expanded features like, keyboards or better screens or better cameras to consumers, obviously with more of a business focus. But I don't disagree with some of the sentiment that they were completely caught by surprise, just like BlackBerry was for the consumer revolution. That these younger or more urbane professionals were using these BlackBerries and Nokias and Windows phones and Treos. That when Apple fantastically targeted your general consumer, just regular people who maybe didn't have the same sort of corporate need for a mobile data device, that Nokia did not have a good response to that. And what's sad is they got really close, in my opinion. They got really close with products like the N8. The N8 was actually a phenomenal little phone, an amazing camera. It was a large sensor camera with Carl Zeiss optics and a proper xenon flash. And it was just running a kind of a funky build of Symbian. And if you weren't familiar with the ins and outs of Symbian, especially how you acquired apps and you got updates and you kind of worked through the UI that way, it wasn't a very easy phone to get the hang of out of the box. But I think it was a really compelling piece and brought great battery life to the table in a very small form factor. I could go on. So
I mean, Renato brings up all these fights with the iPhone. I mean, this was long past when Nokia should have started fighting for its life. And I mean, they had some great entries, even as you said, with the Lumias, but some sort of stumbling block had to happen. In this case, it was Microsoft. So for
Microsoft always represents a pretty big stumbling block if you have to trip over Microsoft.
You want to bring up Peter Molyneux's name? Go ahead.
Oh, so sad.
Anyways, so I'm going to bring up a question that you're going to hate, especially
do it.
That we're 2 hours.
Put me on the spot.
The podcast. is the hype worth it? Worth it? Because I know many are emotionally attached to the comeback, especially in Europe. After Siemens and Ericsson, Nokia was the last big European mobile manufacturer to exist. Can they do it? Their only success was with the X series, X00, X20s, and most of the services that made the Lumias a better Windows phone are not in Nokia's hand anymore. And most importantly, they screwed up a big time with past smartphones, and Microsoft's poor strategy helped to kill a good bit of fame, the last bit of fame, I guess you could argue, that Nokia had in the post-iPhone era. So, where's the path forward, and is the hype? Is the hype? I'll ask this: is the hype more because of did it get killed because everyone went bigger and Nokia did go big but not big enough, or were they?
Nokia 1520 was pretty big. I don't know. I mean, like, just to kind of cut to the quick here. In trying to reply, I mean, like, that's a lot of stuff he's asking, and there's a lot of stuff going on in some of these comments. I don't even know that right now the Nokia name is really generating hype as much as it's generating hope. What we could always turn to for Nokia, even when their products were flopping, was a company that was willing to push the boundaries and experiment and try some really outlandish things. It's really a shame that we didn't get as much of a sense of that in North America as I think Europe and the rest of the world got. But even with some of the phones that we got under the Windows umbrella, the 1520, that was a big phone for North America. The 1020, there are still cameras on phones that have difficulty competing with that hardware when it comes to still photo output. Even when it comes to some HD video output, we saw from them a company that was willing to take risks, that was willing to push the boundaries on design. When everyone was coming out with just sort of cheap, flimsy, glossy, easy to bend plastic, they were coming out with these beautifully sculpted polycarb devices. So that Nokia name represented design, aesthetic, and the potential for not just bleeding edge technology. It wasn't that. It was an actual lifestyle approach to pushing the boundaries on some of these features. The 1020 I keep pointing to, like, you could not find a more daring camera experiment. I mean, we're in an era with dual camera sensor phones, and the 1020 still represents a high watermark that is difficult to touch. So that's I think when we talk about Nokia, the Nokia name coming back and flirting with the Android market, is that we hope that the company that is licensing it, this HMD, who's made up of a lot of previous Nokia executives, is willing to take risks. And if we just get another sort of rounded corner rectangle phone with a nice camera and good battery life, then we'll know that the Nokia name is properly dead. But if they come out of the gate swinging and hitting hard, not just representing for the entry-level phones, which Nokia sold a grip of under the Microsoft years, but they also try and represent for the flagship community, and then also for a specialty market of some kind. If it's an audio specialty market, content creation specialty market, maybe it's a productivity market that they can give the Note a run for its money, that the Samsung has been hobbled a little bit this year. That's what I think we're all hoping to see and why we're talking about this brand. And on that, I think it's as good a place as any to wrap this puppy up. Good job, Jules, playing us out. I love it.
Oh boy, yeah, that was a fun one.
That was a good one. It was a good show, guys. I'm excited about this one. So, but the show's over. Another episode of the Pocketnow Weekly has come and gone. The show is ending, but the conversation continues on Twitter, where you can find Jules as @PointJules, and I'm humbly @SomeGadgetGuy. Pocketnow is around the web on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, and our home site, pocketnow.com. And shows like this cannot exist without your support. Sharing the weekly with your friends who love mobile technology, and by dropping reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever
Stitcher
podcast
Play.
reviews can be left. Wow, I'm tired. Once again, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Audio Blocks and Video Blocks. Definitely check out what they have to offer for improving your content creation. Use that promo code Pocket 2016 when you go to their website, and they'll give you a killer deal on a subscription. They're helping us keep the lights on here, but ultimately there wouldn't be a show if it weren't for our listeners and subscribers who have kept us on the air since 2012. The Pocketnow Weekly will be back next week with all kinds of delicious technology goodness, so make sure you tune back in.